This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, episode 716, Google Jamboard. Welcome to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, hosted by author, educator, speaker, and mom, the Cool Cat teacher, Vicki Davis. Today, it's all about Google Jamboard with digital learning integration designer Tom Mullaney. Tom's education experience includes special education, social studies, and educational technology coaching in New York, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. He is a Google for Education certified innovator and trainer. Tom hosts the Sustainable Teaching Podcast, where he interviews teachers about their careers and passions. It's all about Google Jamboard. Enjoy!
I want to thank Advancement Courses for sponsoring today's show. Stay tuned at the end of the show to see how you can save 20% on engaging and meaningful professional development from Advancement Courses. Google Jamboard. Today we have Tom Mullaney with us. I'm going to tell you, as we look back over the traffic, there's so many people accessing Tom, the 2018 Google Jamboard podcast episode that you and I recorded. So we are going to update our Google Jamboard for 2020, and we're recording this in November 2020. So for those who've never heard of Google Jamboard, help us understand, what is it?
So Google Jamboard is a G Suite for Education or Google Workspace core app, just like Docs, Drawings, Sheets, and Slides, that it saves to your Google Drive. It works with Google Classroom, just like Docs, Drawings, Sheets, and Slides. And it's kind of a whiteboard or a smart board where you and your students can just throw up ideas. That may have been an inarticulate way of saying that last part. I think it's, you throw things at the wall and see what sticks. I think that saying is associated with Jamboard a lot, and I just malappropriated it. But anyway, it's just this lovely little free-form collaboration space where you can actually draw, because you cannot draw in Google Drawings. You can actually draw there. And it's a little bit like Slides as far as the architecture, in that, Slides has presentation and slides, individual slides. A jam has individual frames, and an entire jam can be saved as a PDF, and individual frames can be saved as an image which replicates slides.
Yeah, I've heard some folks say, similar to Padlet. What are some other tools that people have swapped from or said, hey, I'm going to use this instead of blank?
So there are similarities to Padlet in that there's a sticky note tool. And I really like that sticky note tool because it comes in 5 colors. And I like to tell people, with the 5 colors, you can say, hey, Monica, you're yellow, Rachel, you're green, Phoebe, you're blue, Joey, pink, and Chandler, orange, to give the kids a little structure as far as their contributions. So Padlet is probably the best approximation as far as a substitute. It doesn't have hyperlinking yet. I hope it does one day. And it's kind of like if you look at Google Drawings and Google Slides and say, I wish I could just kind of draw and jot and annotate inside of those two, that's where you go for Jamboard.
Now, can you comment on Jamboard?
Great question. So Jamboard jams are Google Drive files. They are missing 2 big things that we think of when we think of Google Drive. One is commenting. There's no commenting in a jam, although, you could set, say, yellow sticky notes to be comments, if that makes sense. You could give a structure like that. And the other thing is there is no version history. And a lot of teachers are somewhat uncomfortable with that. But my suggestion for that is keep it small. Keep it 2 to 7 students in a Jamboard jam, and you're less likely to have an issue where you say, hey, I wonder who did this or that.
So let's talk about how are teachers using this, in particular those that are remote, or really all of us are blended these days. So give us some examples of how you're seeing Jamboard used.
All right, let me compare it to something. You asked me earlier to compare it to something, and I only gave you Padlet. There is something it compares to, and that's Smart Notebook of all things. So in Smart Notebook, there is an infinite cloner. And so imagine if your kids all had Smart Notebook on their devices. And so you can do things where, if you want to demonstrate mathematics, properties of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, back in the day with Smart Notebook, I did a virtual cash register, and now you could do the same with Jamboard. I'm seeing a lot of math teachers show relationships or drag something to the right place. You can do some matching. You could do a political spectrum. Put these on the right, put these on the left, maybe put a little text in explaining your reasoning. So there's a lot of different things people use Jamboard jams for. I can see it just as if you want to get just like a little gallery walk at the end of a unit, you could give each student a component of the unit and say, hey, we need you to focus on, so for 1960s, you all are civil rights movement, you all are Vietnam, and so on and so forth. And as they learn about those things, put up images, put up text, and then at the end of the unit, you share everybody's jams and see what all's there, what all's missing, and go from there.
Well, I would think even John Carippo's Iron Chef Jigsaw protocol would be great on Jamboard. So how about this? So, it's been some time since we did our show on Google Jamboard back to 2018. What kind of new things have happened in Jamboard for those who may have tried it a while ago and thought, well, this is not for me yet?
Okay, so the big one on that is that it's now web-based. When you and I spoke in early 2018, it was an app. So it would work on an iPad, and that was about it. And now it's web-based, so that changes everything. The biggest new things that they have, well, one, you can add images. And when I say you can add images, you can add any image, not only from Google Drive or from Google Image Search, but from your device as well. That means any screen cap, anything you screen capture could be put in a Jamboard jam, and then we can annotate and draw and mark up and do all that stuff. The other recent additions, there is now a shape tool, and that shape tool includes an arrow. It's kind of just a blank arrow, which you can actually defaults to blank, but then you can color it. But you can show relationships and cycles and kind of like have a fun graphic organizer. And there's also a text box because the sticky notes, after a certain amount of characters, they don't work anymore. So now there's just an unlimited text box and you can type as much as you want on there.
Okay, so you are a consultant and you work with schools. When you start teaching teachers Jamboard, what is their response and what kind of things do they say, now I can do this? Well,
one of the things is just that in Google, there is collaboration, right? It's very structured in G Suite or Google Workspace. It's text comments, things like that, version history, okay. In Jamboard, it's a lot more freeform and you can be a little bit more artistic and creative and you can draw. I think teachers, when they see this, I think a lot of them go towards a kind of graphic organizers, but just a little bit more messy, if that makes sense. Like it doesn't have to be so clean and neat and tidy. And that's what I always tell teachers is that we never grade Jamboard jams on neatness or presentation. It's an inherently kind of messy tool. I'm looking at one right now that I use as an example for pre-writing. It's a great tool for pre-writing. And I have the story of my wife and I and our cat, who we're about to come up on the 1-year anniversary. So first frame, paragraph 1 is pictures of us with him at where we met him. And I got a little hashtag, adopt, don't shop. Frame 2, pictures of us the first gotcha day when it's us and him in the house for the first time. And then frame 3 is just pictures of us living with him and whatnot. And so pre-writing is a big thing that I think teachers look at Jamboard and say, yes, that's where they can jot down their ideas, get some visuals, kind of get excited about writing because they have a nice little outline, but it's much more visual than a conventional outline.
Okay, so a teacher says, okay, Tom, I'm going to try this out. How do they get started?
So a couple things. One, go to jamboard.google.com. If in your school account, you are blocked or it says you don't have access to the service, then you need to reach out to your G Suite admin or submit a tech ticket or something like that. You can still play with it in your personal Google account, jamboard.google.com. And what I would suggest, you could do something where you create a jam and pair up students. So frame 1 is Marty and Biff, and frame 2 is Joey and Chandler. And frame 3 is Monica and Rachel, whatever, and give them some sort of task. Maybe it's brainstorm causes for World War I, whatever it may be, whatever academic task is in front of you, and add pictures that illustrate what you're saying, things like that. So you're putting them all in the one jam, but you're telling them what frame to go to, so pair 1, you're in frame 1, pair 2, you're in frame 2. That might be a good way. And once you have that jam set up, if your kids are in Google Classroom, you can add it to an assignment. Students can edit, just like you could a doc or slides as well.
Okay, so as we finish up, we're going to ask a question that's not necessarily a Jamboard question, just a general question. Fill in the blank, Tom. As we go through this time in education, I hope teachers don't blank.
I hope teachers don't associate the problems with distance learning or the challenges of distance learning with technology in general. As in a post-pandemic world, I really hope that, residential Wi-Fi not working, not being able to see your students in person doesn't become associated with using technology. I hope that when we get back to normal, whenever that may be, teachers look at technology and say, ooh, now that we're back in person and now that we're not separated, this can really make a difference for my students. I hope the technology doesn't become associated with the stress and hardship of the pandemic because it's not the technology's fault.
Okay, so Tom Mullaney, we've talked about Google Jamboard. We're going to also include all his handles, his blog, and a link to his digital breakout games, which we haven't talked about. We'll probably have to talk about that at another time. But thank you, Tom, and thanks for helping us update everybody on Google Jamboard. And this is definitely on my big 3 list to try very soon. Thanks, Tom.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Hello, everybody. It's a new year and time to plan your professional development with advancement courses. They offer over 280 online graduate-level PD courses in 20 subject areas. These courses are online and self-paced, so you can take them anywhere, anytime, with up to 6 months to complete. Receive graduate credit through CAEP and regionally accredited university partners, or for continuing education units that meet your state requirements. And right now, you can save 20% off each course with the code COOL20. That's just $120 per graduate credit hour or $160 for 50 clock hours. Go to advancementcourses.com/CoolCat and use the coupon code COOL20 to get your 20% off. I'm getting ready to select my advancement courses class for this year, so take time to pick yours out now. That's advancementcourses.com/CoolCat. And the coupon code is COOL20. Never stop learning.